Good afternoon. My name is Ed Sachs, and I am president of my collaborative team. Welcome to a special CollaborEAT discussion group. After today's webinar, we will email you a link to your certificate of completion for this webinar. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see a chat button. If you wish to ask questions, please do so through the chat. We will attempt to get to as many questions as possible, and time permitting, we may open your mics at the end of the webinar for discussion. If you're having any issues, please post to the chat and our webmaster will respond, or send an email to webmaster@mycollaborativeteam.com. Now, I'd like to take just a minute to tell you about my collaborative team. We are a Florida not-for-profit corporation whose mission statement is to provide meaningful, dynamic, powerful, and thought-provoking resources to collaborative practice groups and practitioners worldwide. Our vision is to enlighten the world about settling disputes through the collaborative process. Our mission is to market the collaborative process with our listing members and to provide marketing support and tools to collaborative practice groups. Our newsletter is the largest distributed collaborative newsletter in the world. We reach over 5,000 collaboratively trained professionals worldwide and over 10,000 lawyers, financial professionals, and mental health professionals throughout Florida, California, and several other states. Over 2,400 people open our newsletter every week, and over 1,200 go to our website every month. We invite you to join our team and support our mission. Check us out at mycollaborativeteam.com. We hope you'll join us and support what we are doing. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce our special CollaborEAT hosts for today. Caroline Johnson and Karen Sachs will lead us in a discussion on coronavirus and its effects on co-parenting. Caroline is a founding partner at Johnson, Ritchie & Feldman, PA in Boca Raton, Florida. She focuses her practice on personal injury and family law matters. She's a member of the Florida Bar, the Southern District of Florida Federal Court, the Palm Beach County Bar Association, the South Palm Beach County Bar Association, and the Florida Association of Women Lawyers. She graduated from FAU cum laude in 2003 and then attended the Levin College of Law at the University of Florida, receiving her JD in 2006. Karen Sachs has been in practice as a nationally certified licensed mental health counselor for over 30 years. She's licensed in both Florida and Illinois and is the founder and director of the Center for Counseling and Rational Solutions, also in Boca. Karen has developed a comprehensive set of tools for life, which she uses to help her clients manage life issues, difficulties, and crisis. More recently, Karen's passion for children and families led her to certification by the Supreme Court of Florida as a family and elder mediator, and she is also qualified as a parenting coordinator and trained as a neutral mental health facilitator in collaborative law. We welcome Caroline and Karen. Take it away, ladies.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for having us. You know, this world has changed. I want to ask you all to just close your eyes for one moment and think about where you were 9/11. What were you doing? Do you remember? Do you remember when you went home and how your family handled it? What was going on at the time? If you were there, you would remember that. And your children remember this as that same kind of experience. This is a very unique situation where we're all trying to make sense out of the unknown and the uncontrollable. It's that lack of control that really gets to us. And it's our children that are watching and need us to keep it together. We need to be the example for them. Remember, it's not the things that happen to you or what the situation is, it's how we handle them. And if our children see that we've got this, we're watching, we're taking care, we can help them. That's a better way to go. We need to validate their feelings and tell them we're all a little concerned. We know this, but we're going to take care of you. How do we do this best? By communication. Communicating with your children, as I just said, about the validation of their needs and what is scaring them or what they're feeling like. It may be something like, I just miss my friends. Or it may be something like, I am scared, I'm never gonna see my mom or dad again. It can go the gamut, but we have to be aware of what they're afraid of and let them know we're listening. Also, it's about how we communicate with our co-parent. Remember, it's more important to concentrate on how much you love your kids than how much you dislike your co-parent at the time. Talk to your spouse, but before you talk to your ex, you need to do a couple of things. You need to breathe. Let's take the emotionality out of it. Stop, step back, take a couple of breaths, and then say, what do we really need? What is best for our children? Even if it's taking a mental truce, like I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, because you'd be very surprised how sometimes the most inflexible parent before the pandemic may be much more flexible now. Again, let's not assume how they're going to react. The other thing is showing your children by example that you've got this, but you're also taking care of yourself. You're getting up. You have a schedule. There is a plan. You're going to exercise. You're going to do things that are going to help you all through this situation. It's not all gloom and doom. Let's limit some of the news that's going on. Very important. We also need to reframe and maybe take a different tack to this, like look how close we are. We're Zooming with relatives we haven't seen in such a long time. So showing them you can be up because your attitude is contagious. Parenting plans. Let's talk about that. Let's not use our children as weapons, please. Let's go by our parenting plan as best we can, but let's be creative. There are ways to do some things. Let's be generous with our co-parent. Let's understand what their special needs are before we go and worry about what they should or shouldn't be doing with us. We need a plan. Children need a plan. People need a plan. The worst thing we could do when we're anxious in uncertain times is not to have a plan. Because when we're anxious, we feel out of control. If we have a plan, now we're in control. We're all looking at it. We're seeing what's going on in one parent's house and maybe copying what's going on and having that consistency in the other parent's house if we can. Just remember, you're not going to be the perfect parent. If one of you misses one day of schoolwork because your child needs that extra attention, maybe we need to take that into consideration and be flexible before we jump to, look what he did or she did. They didn't do the homework last night. That doesn't help anybody. So let's just communicate and let each other know what's going on. If you had a meeting at school, with a teacher. Share that with your spouse. Let's just be a little more generous and a little bit more willing to just go with the flow. I just wonder if any of you have had any of these things happening to you. Just a thought. Maybe your clients are surprising you and they are using that mental truth. Just a thought. If you have, let us know. The challenges in going by the plan. Fear and emotion-based responses are the worst, because when we get anxious and we are fear and we are emotional, we can't think rationally. We can't come up with that plan. It's contagious. The more we start getting frustrated, the more our body language shows we're frustrated, the more we cannot have a rational conversation with our co-parent. There are some things that I've heard from, I'll just give you some examples, and then I know Caroline's gonna go into this in more depth, but I absolutely will not let my child go to my co-parent's house because his girlfriend or boyfriend is there. I don't know who they're around. I am just not permitting it. Sound familiar? Or I don't want my child going near my co-parent because I'm not sure who he lets them be around. And I'm not sure how much he's taking or she's taking care because they are a professional that's a doctor or a fire person or a police person, or they are in contact with people and I am scared. Think about, that goes back to the tool of stop, take a breath, step back and say, what's best for my child? And then talk to your co-parent. Be generous.
Yes, that's very true. I think that flexibility, creativity, all of that's very important right now because these are unprecedented times. And so as a family law attorney, I love to look at the precedent, the case law where decisions were made, when issues were presented, and I can go to it and I can explain to the clients, here's what's happened in the past. But that's not an option right now because this is a new issue. And so I wanted to take a look at the legal aspects of the coronavirus and its effect on time sharing right now. Because immediately we started getting phone calls as family law attorneys. What effect does this have on my parenting plan? Do I have to allow the other parent to see the children? I don't think they're going to follow the protocols. I don't think they'll do social distancing. I don't think it's in the best interest of my child. And so one place that I go to is I look at Florida Statute 61.13 and specifically Section 4C. And I go over with my clients, here's the remedies available to a court if one party improperly denies time sharing to the other parent. And what the court can do is order make-up time sharing. I'm sure make-up time sharing is something that's going to become an issue when all of the restrictions are removed from the self-quarantine and social distancing. It's just going to be a very prevalent topic of conversation. Another thing the court can do is award fees and costs to the parent who had to enforce the time sharing. They can order the offending parent to attend a parenting course or complete community service. They can have the offending parent pay for the cost of providing frequent time sharing if the parties live more than 60 miles away. They can actually use the denial of the time sharing or the failure to comply with the time sharing schedule as a basis to modify the time sharing schedule if the court deems it's in the best interest of the child. And they can enter any reasonable sanction as a result of noncompliance. That's a catch-all. There's always a catch-all. And then, you know, failing to comply with the time sharing can be punished by contempt of court. So that's one way. That's Florida statute. I would love to know if there's other remedies available in other areas for denial of time sharing or failure to comply with the time sharing schedule. If anyone has, you know, statutes that they'd want to send us the link, we could link to that so people could see for different areas what the remedies are. But the question is, will courts be doing this based on failure to comply with time sharing during the coronavirus pandemic? And I just wanted to look at some of the case studies that I'm aware of. One I'm sure many people have heard about is Dr. Teresa Green in Miami. She's a doctor. The court entered an emergency order suspending her time sharing, even though she tested negative for COVID-19. She did not have it, but based on her potential risk of exposure during her profession, the court suspended her time sharing. Now, she did get that order stayed. The Third District Court of Appeal did stay that order, and I'm sure there's going to be continued litigation on that issue. But that is one case where the judge did say, no, you can't see your children right now. And then the Third District Court of Appeal has put a pause on that. There was an Ontario triage judge, Justice Pazarats, and he decided a case Ribeiro versus Wright. And he issued the opinion that regarding current time sharing, it should prevail absent compelling circumstances. So a client just saying, hey, I don't think that they're going to follow the protocol and I just don't feel comfortable with it, was not enough in that case. The judge said the parties should work together, but the current time sharing schedule should control unless there's something that makes it not in the best interest of the children. If someone was exposed due to travel, this opinion was entered pretty early on to when people were being quarantined based on the travel, and the judge said, you need something like the parent is failing to follow the protocols. You can prove that they're failing to social distance. But the court really tried to promote creativity, flexibility, and common sense, and specifically said these are unprecedented times. We need to work together. And what I loved about the opinion, the judge said, right now, families need more cooperation and less litigation. None of us have ever experienced anything like this. We are all going to have to try a bit harder for the sake of our children. So that was one case where the time sharing was not suspended. And it was not, the court was very clear that it was not just entering an opinion in that case, but trying to encourage other parents to work together, to not seek litigation as the answer right now. Right now, just take care of our children. A third case was in Palm Beach County. The one parent was refusing to allow time sharing, just unilaterally stopped allowing time sharing because the other parent wanted to take the children to daycare. Daycare was open, but the father said, no, I don't want them in daycare. I'm putting them in a self-imposed 14-day quarantine. So an emergency motion for pickup order was filed and the judge denied it as an emergency. And in Palm Beach County, you have to show that someone's in imminent harm if an emergency order is not entered. And so the court said this is not an emergency, and the parties ended up resolving the issue in mediation, but the mother went over 3 weeks without seeing her children just because she had said she was going to take the children to daycare. So I would love if anyone has any other cases that they're aware of, because we're learning in real time. We're learning from orders that are being entered on unprecedented facts. So if you could share anything that you've heard of, any cases, you know, but what I'm seeing right now is people are trying to promote, the courts are trying to promote the current time sharing schedule, unless there's some reason that would make it completely not in the best interest of the children. And I would love any feedback if anyone's seen anything different or cases that are similar.
We do have a couple comments and questions so far, so we can take those real fast. One for Karen, just wanting to know if attorneys have reached out and you're seeing an increase in the utilization of parenting coordination services. Is that something that you're seeing an increase of now, or do you expect to see an increase of?
I was seeing more of an increase. It kind of dwindled down this last week, but these last 2 weeks, but now it's kind of picking up again. People who are more collaborative that are not going to court, but just the collaborative attorneys are sending their people to me to try and help people work it out. So yes.
And we have a question about, and more, I think, towards Caroline. What are you advising your clients that do want to withhold time sharing because of fear that other parents won't follow the social distancing recommendations? And maybe Karen can also talk on that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I'm going over every resource I have available to me. I love to show them, cases. I love to show them the local rules is the next topic that I'm going to go into. So I'm kind of showing them what has been decided so far. I mean, it's everything's so fact specific. Why? Why do they believe that the other parent won't follow it? How legitimate is that concern? Because I think that's so, everyone has a different level of anxiety about the other parent and what they will be doing. But the question is, what is it based on? Is there legitimate concerns? And when you ultimately have to go before the judge, if you do, how can you justify this decision? And so it is very fact specific, and I really am more focused on what's causing the fear. Karen, you had something to add to that?
I do, because I agree with you there. This is happening in real time, but I think it's real important that if they really do communicate, there are ways that they could deal with it if they hear each other. And that's where, before they run, well, I know you're going to cover this as well, Caroline, but before they go to run to take visitation away or do something like that, talk. What is the reason? What do you really want here? Like that example I gave before about the girlfriend being a doctor. What was that really about? Was it about that? And how it ended up was, I said, what do you want? Would you like for him to just come to you until this is over? Not that it was going to happen, but it was just a question. She immediately went back and said, no, I need my time too. He can go. Let's figure out ways where it won't be unsafe. So I think just talking them through that initial fear and that initial knee-jerk emotional reaction, as you say, like, what are the real reasons, as Carolyn just said, is very important.
Yeah. I'm not comfortable usually filing. I don't advise clients, hey, just don't follow the court order. If their child is in significant risk or danger, I think we can file the emergency motion. I don't know what will happen, but there's if you have to go to litigation, there are ways to still do that. Emergency hearings are still being held. So, I mean, it really depends on the severity of the concerns. And so it's a case-by-case analysis. So the local rules, some courts are issuing local rules. Broward County has a standing order that is very helpful because I'm sure everyone's getting calls. What do we do? How does this work? And so Broward County issued a standing order that said the current time sharing should be complied with. And it's Administrative Order 2020-30-temp. So I just went and took a look at it. One thing it addressed was, where are we in the parenting plan right now? School's let out. Are we doing summer time sharing or are we doing regular time sharing? And the court addresses that. It says continue as if school let out when it was supposed to. So we do regular time sharing according to your parenting plan right now. And then when summer would have started, you'll switch to the summertime sharing portion of your parenting plan. A lot of times the exchanges of the children were supposed to take place at school. So it addresses that. It says the parents need to agree here. You need to agree on another location. School is out. Pick something in writing, make it, between the two of you. And if you can't, it gives a procedure for selecting the closest police station. Hopefully parents can work together and find a safe location to exchange the children. But if not, it gives the guidelines of how you would pick where the exchange could take place at a police station. It also has provisions that right now, well, you can still travel with the shelter in place, then you still exercise the current time sharing. But if the restrictions got to the point where there was no travel, so you couldn't exchange the children, it already specifies that the parent entitled to majority time sharing, and it says 183 nights, in the parenting plan will have the children until such time the restrictions are removed, and that makeup time sharing will be awarded to the other parent after the restrictions are lifted. So it's providing a lot of guidance. It also said all video conferencing between parent and child should be increased so that there is regular and consistent contact with both children during this time. So Broward County, I mean, it's a really good local rule to go to kind of address some of the questions that are arising as far as the impact on parenting plans. Palm Beach County is not doing one. I mean, I have not seen one, and I've heard from one general magistrate that they weren't planning on doing one. So as far as I'm aware, Palm Beach County is not issuing something similar like this that says, keep your time sharing schedule the way it is. But if anyone knows of any local rules where they are administrative orders on this, I would love to hear what other courts are doing, because even if something's not directly binding on the court you're dealing with, it's great to know how these issues are being handled across the country, across the world. So if anyone has any local rules that they're aware of, I would love for you to send it. Yes, consistency, I see Carolyn, consistency would be great right now. But just knowing, you know, it's judges sitting and deciding the issues as they're presented to them. And so it's interesting to see how everyone is resolving these issues.
We do real fast have a comment from Jeff Wasserman. I'm not sure if he wants to expand, and we can open his mic if he does. But he wanted to mention that you should be careful about terminating the collaborative process if you feel litigation must be restored and they would need to withdraw as the process has been terminated.
Yes, and we were going to go into the different options out there, and collaborative is a great one. I'm kind of skipping ahead just a little bit, but yes, the court litigation is only if you have a litigated case. We have co-parents who have never filed a court action in, you know, before. I mean, they may have to initiate court proceedings to get before a judge even to begin with. So the collaborative process, I think, is going to be a huge resource in trying to resolve disputes outside of court, because court access, the courts are open right now, but it's not easy to get a court date. I think a lot of people are seeing more collaborative cases right now because they can handle it without the court system. But you're right. If the collaborative process does break down and you have to go to litigation, then the attorneys do have to withdraw from that matter. I just see a case here, or the Indiana governor issued an executive order that stated that regular parenting time will occur and that parents may drive for parenting time exchanges. That's great. Okay, that's great to know. So I think that is what I'm seeing, is that the orders that are being issued are saying comply with what you have. Go with what was in place before this took place. If absent these really compelling circumstances, and then, you know, you might have to go to court or resolve them. But okay, that's great. Anyone else knows any of these local rules? I love just hearing about it, what other judges are doing, other counties, other states. So another issue that we wanted to look at is, I don't think it's just going to be what happens with time sharing. I think there are going to be so many issues that arise from what's going on. There's access to the courts for parenting issues are already being impacted. Someone calls and they want to know, and you can't get issues resolved as quickly. Not that it was ever that quick, right? But now it's even harder to get to a judge to resolve disputes. I think there's gonna be a lot of issues that come up when the restrictions are lifted, or even, you know, until that time. And it's gonna be hard to go to court to get the answer to those questions. I think, like I said, a lot of it's going to focus on if someone was denied time sharing or it wasn't practical. Think about parents who live in different states and they're not letting the children travel to the different states. There's going to be issues about makeup time sharing. And I don't know, you know, if people can agree on it, it's going to be great. If they can be cooperative with one another, if they can foster the relationships with both parents and make up that time share, will be good. But I think that's going to be an issue we're going to see a lot of. I think right now it's got to be difficult, the homeschooling, parents figuring out a system between two households, the schedule, things like that. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens as issues arise for that. And on the other side, this was just me kind of brainstorming. I'd love for anyone to throw any issues that they're dealing with.
We do have Carol Ann threw in that there's going to be people that are dealing with child support issues being laid off. So I don't know if you guys want to address that, or if people have dealt with that and they want to, give suggestions in the chat, but I'll let you guys address that.
Yeah, I mean, child support right now, people, their income is being affected. Lots of people. I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs altogether. So I think child support litigation or child support mediation or child support collaborative cases, they're going to need to happen, because to say to someone, well, you were under a court order, you had to pay even though you had no money. I mean, there needs to be flexibility to punish someone who lost their job. Karen, you're nodding your head. So I think that we're going to have so many issues regarding child support amounts, child support that's owed or shouldn't be owed, and dealing with resolving those disputes between people, right, Karen?
Yes, and that's such an emotional issue because, not forgetting about the kids, we always remember the kids, but when you lose your job and there is no income coming in and you're feeling bad about that yourself, for a lot of people, that's their identity. And now the spouse is saying, well, what about me? And there's no give and take. And that's where, as you said, there needs to be a little flexibility, at least for the kids, at least until even they can get this sorted out. But this is, again, it's unprecedented times. But this is where we have to be really careful about how we discuss this and when we discuss this with our co-parent.
Yeah, I did see.
We do. Oh, go ahead. Maybe you saw the question come in.
That's what I was going to address, the question about how courts will handle support modification where the decrease is not necessarily permanent. And yep, I was just going to talk about, there's case law out there where support payments can be abated, where it's not anticipated that the reduction in income is permanent, but it's abated, and arrears don't need to accrue during that period of abatement, because the case law will speak to, you're just furthering the hardship on the person if they're going into debt during this time. So I have seen cases out there, and Jeffrey Wasserman pointed out that Broward will hear abatement motions fairly quickly. And you have to modify through a supplemental petition. You file the whole supplemental petition to modify if you're looking for a longer modification. But an abatement motion is where you ask, hey, this is a temporary situation. I don't have the income to pay my support and I need a break right now, but I anticipate I will regain employment or get my income level back to where it was and resume support payments. Jeffrey, let me know if I covered that enough with that. Okay, and then one general magistrate is requiring a petition for modification, even if you think it's just temporary. So, I mean, again, it depends what judge you're in front of on so much. I mean, that's what we all face if we're going the litigation route. I mean, it's one judge and there's some uniformity, but you can get vastly different results when you go in front of a judge. Most issues we're dealing with abuse of discretion. So it's built right in there that they have discretion. And so
one more question that did come in that I thought was really interesting here is, have you experienced any clients that want just a temporary COVID parenting plan?
I have not yet. I have not had a temporary COVID parenting plan arise. And I think that's very interesting. And maybe anyone who's listening had drafted a temporary COVID parenting plan?
I haven't drafted a temporary one, but what'll happen is when this happens, sometimes when people are referred to me, we'll come up with solutions, creative ways to help them.
Right.
If we can, but you're the attorney.
I haven't had one. What will be interesting is will people put something in their parenting plans going forward to handle situations? What if there's a pandemic? What if there is something like this where you can't predict it, and what would happen in emergency situations? I think people will probably start putting in their parenting plan an emergency provision if there's a hurricane coming, because when a hurricane's coming, I get these calls. What do we do? Where's the time sharing exchange? It's on the day that the hurricane's supposed to hit. And there's so much uncertainty in that situation. You know, we don't know the cone of where it might go. Is a large cone that causes a lot of anxiety all across the state if it's headed our way. And so I think that we might see parenting plans try to anticipate situations like this. If anyone has any language that they're using or that they think might help in these situations, we'd love to see it. That'd be great, because I think parents will want something in there now that they've gone through this with so much uncertainty to maybe help them through it next time. And then the other issues I was just thinking of that might come up are what activities the children will be allowed to engage in, like visiting third parties and grandparents while the social distancing is going on. I see people on Facebook have family members and they're together. I see other people where the family member standing across the street because they won't get close to one another. They don't live in the same household. When will the children be able to resume normal activities? I don't think it's going to be across the board. Everyone's going to be comfortable at the same time. Okay, just go back to what you were doing before this happened. And a big one I was thinking was if there's a vaccine developed, what if the parents don't agree on whether the children should get it? I think there's a lot of issues. I would love you guys to share any issues you've thought of or that you've been presented with, because this is going to affect more than just the time sharing. Parents are going to have to make decisions together regarding how to handle resumption of normal activity, return to school, return to daycare, and then whether or not to get a vaccine done, whether they believe the vaccine is safe for the children. I mean, there's just a lot of issues I foresee that parents are gonna have to work together to resolve coming out of this. And Karen, did you want to talk about some of the options to help deal with some of the issues we see?
Well, some of the options are, of course, there's therapy. For people who are really having a hard time dealing with the situation, the adults themselves. I've gotten more calls to talk to children who are really upset because their folks are upset and they don't know what's going on. So whether they're withdrawn or they're getting very anxious and agitated, but certainly therapy is a way to go to help the parents themselves be able to deal with it. Because like we all know the story about the airplane. If you're on an airplane and the oxygen mask goes down, who do you put it on first, you or your child? You put it on you, because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of them. So you need to deal with some of this. The other thing is parenting coordination. And that is even privately having them get a little bit of taking the emotionality out, dealing with it with a third party, and having them come up with very different ideas about how to handle things. Like being flexible with how things are going. For instance, and I don't know if that's maybe on the next slide or we forgot it, but there was one where, and we have it, where there are distinct RVs for docs, because it happened so many times where doctors couldn't see their kids or health professionals who were working closely because there was that concern of what they were going to bringing home and sharing whatever virus. And so there was a whole thing that was put through on just on a website where people would donate and lend out their RVs or their campers, so parents can park it or drive it near the other home so they could see the children, even at a distance. But just the parenting coordination asks, what is this really about? How can we come up with, and that's what collaborative is really all about, how can we come up with some creative ways to help what you are so fearful about and work around whatever it is. And so that's what parenting coordination helps do before people run to court. The last thing I'm going to say is a great thing for people for structure, especially in times like this with divorced parents, is our family wizard, because it puts a schedule on for all to see. The kids would know what the schedule is for school. The other partner would know what it is. So using tools like that really help, so both parents could be on the same page and do the best for their kids. I'll let you take the other two.
Yes, and I do think parenting coordination is so great for especially high conflict, to have someone there to help work through those issues that seem to arise often, and they just need some guidance in trying to resolve it. Mediation is great. It is, you know, there's a neutral facilitator, there's two the parties, and there can be lawyers for the parties, or they can be pro se mediation where they're representing themselves, but they come together, and the neutral facilitator tries to help them build creative resolutions for their disagreements, their disputes, and hopefully at the end of a mediation process, they reach a compromise. Everyone gives a little, everyone understands the other person's perspective a little better after talking it out, going back and forth, finding out what's really important to the parents and or to the parties, and figuring out how they can breach the gap in between their positions and what they can compromise on, what they can't. And so mediation's an event. You go there and it takes place, and you either settle some of it, settle none of it, or resolve the whole thing. So I love mediation. I think it's a great tool, a great alternative dispute resolution process. Also is the collaborative process. I'm sure everyone's familiar with the collaborative process, but in this time where we don't know what judges are going to do, we don't have access to the courts like we usually would. It's a great process. I mean, I think it's great all the time, but it's a great process where you can handle the disputes outside of court. Instead of just being an event like mediation, it's a process to handling the entire matter. It happens outside of court. It's confidential. There's so much creativity and flexibility that goes into it based on interest-based negotiations that take place. It's a team approach, and everyone in the room is trying to resolve the matter. And so it's quite different from litigation, and it really promotes what it seems like the judges are trying to do in the local orders and in the case law that I have seen. It's promote the parents coming together and being flexible, creative, and finding a resolution that's really best for their children, who they should know better than any judge that's going to make the decision anyway. So the collaborative process, I think, will be a huge resource to resolving some of these issues we've talked about, and many more issues with family law. Any other questions? Any other comments?
So we can open up people's mics now if anybody wants to join in on the conversation. We have a couple extra minutes. If people have experienced this, they've had clients call them, they're dealing with it personally, feel free to raise your hand. You can do that in the participation box, and then we can pop your mic on and you can share your experience or ask your questions to the presenters.
I did see one comment that Jeffrey made when we were talking about putting language into the parenting plan. He just advised, very good, is not to limit your ability to modify based on material change of circumstances. And I think that's definitely something to keep in mind when we are working on how we should implement emergency procedures into a parenting plan. Make sure that you don't take away your ability to modify, because time sharing, parental responsibility, these are things that can absolutely be modified if there's a substantial unforeseen change, material change of circumstances. So that was a great comment.
Great. Caroline and Karen, we want to thank both of you very much. That was a wonderful presentation. I personally learned a great deal. I think everybody on board probably did. If there are no more questions, we're going to end things here. Again, we want to thank everybody for joining us. We invite you to give us a visit at mycollaborativeteam.com. We want to tell you that coming up, there will be more of these. Keep your eyes open on your email. but I can tell you that on May 19th will be our next regular CollaborEAT, and we are going to be hosted that time by Jacinta Gallant from Canada, one of the excellent collaborative marketers really in the world. So we invite you to join us. We invite you to watch for our other events. And once again, thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Karen. We'll see you all again real soon.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks for having us.